Today we're going to talk about AI, artificial intelligence. Are we alone? Am I being watched? These are often questions I ask myself when I'm video editing. But seriously guys, we are going to be talking about AI, Topaz Labs Video Enhance AI, which is an application that uses artificial intelligence to enhance videos. And we're going to put it to the test. I do want to mention this is not a sponsored video, so we're not going to be pulling any punches. We're even going to compare some things Video Enhance AI does to plugins that are out on the market and see which is better. And we're even going to open up the Disney Vault and run some tests on my college short films and home videos. I'm terrified. Let's roll the intro. Alright guys, I've been seeing more and more creators mentioning Topaz Labs products, so I thought it would be fun to do kind of a tutorial review video. So Topaz Labs Video Enhance AI is a standalone application that costs $199 and allows you to upscale, clean up, and restore your footage. It also allows you to convert footage to higher frame rates and even create smooth slow motion effects. And it does all this with a bunch of different AI models, which is really a fancy way of saying AI-powered effects. Now instead of me talking about it, let's just go ahead and jump into the software and check it out. And right when we launched the Video Enhance AI application, the first thing we need to do is import some footage. So I'm just gonna drag in 3 different clips I've got here. And what we're gonna try out first is using AI to upscale some clips that I've got to a higher resolution. So I have a few clips here that are HD, and I wanna upscale those to 4K. And I even have a 4K clip that we can upscale to 8K. Now the layout of the Video Enhance AI app is pretty simple and straightforward. You can see we can preview our footage here. We have a timeline where I can scrub through on the video. That's pretty self-explanatory. We can zoom in if we want to. And then over here we have some options for the AI models. We'll kind of touch on that in just a second. And with this first clip, this was filmed at 180 frames per second with a GH5 camera. And one of the limitations with filming in slow motion like that is it only lets me record in HD. So what I'd like to do is upscale this clip to be 4K, so it'll match better with other 4K shots in my edit. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the AI model over here. And this is really kind of the core of the Video Enhance AI application. Now, when you first open up the app, it kind of gives you this simpler suggested options here where you can kind of go in and click different settings about your video, and it'll try to determine the best AI model to use. Now, what I actually recommend doing, even if you're a beginner, is just come over here to the more advanced tab where it says all models. Go ahead and click that. And that'll give you this full list of all these different AI models. And right off the bat, it looks pretty intimidating because there's so many different models and you're really not sure which one to use. But I'm gonna make this a lot simpler for you guys. We're really gonna only use about 3 different ones of these models because a lot of the other ones are kind of outdated. And really, if we come down here, we're gonna see one called the Proteus model. And this is what we're probably gonna use 90% of the time. It's really their latest AI model and it gives the best results. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on that one. And as you can see down here, we can see all the different model parameters. So it has quite a few different options. And you can dial these in and set them to different values based on your clip, what you want to correct. Like if I only wanted to reduce noise, I would just increase the reduce noise option here. And in the beginning, you may really not know what numbers to dial in. So what they actually recommend is you can select this auto detect feature here. You see that little lightning bolt. I'm just gonna go ahead and click on that. And it's gonna auto detect different settings that it recommends for correcting on my particular clip. And if we keep scrolling down here, you can see the output size. And I can select the size that I want this to be. So in this case, I want to select this to be a 4K clip. And then we have options to add in some grain. I'm actually going to turn that off for the time being, just so we can kind of see the raw output. And then for the video format that I want to output this to, you can select different options here. I'm just going to leave this on ProRes. And then if you have audio, you can select to keep the audio. Now, obviously we want to preview this before we export this out, just because we want to make sure this actually looks correct. So you can see we have this little preview button here. And what that's going to do is preview about 1 second of our video with a little side-by-side thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and click that. And you're gonna see it's gonna prepare the AI model, so it's just kind of loading that into the memory. And now we can see it's kind of caching the original footage with the enhanced footage over here. And we can already see it's a little bit crisper. And again, this is just kind of loading. So this will loop eventually when this finishes. And now we can see that. So we have the original footage here on the left and the enhanced footage on the right. And I can actually use the scroll wheel on my mouse to kind of zoom in and out of each of these clips. And just looking at this little 1 second clip, I can tell that it's already enhanced it quite a bit. So I'm just gonna come down here and click close. Now, one thing I do want to mention, when you first download the Video Enhance AI app and you start previewing various AI models, a lot of times we'll actually have to download that specific AI model. Again, it doesn't have to do this every single time, but the first time you use each of the models, it will have to do that. It usually takes a few minutes for that to download. It can be a little bit annoying, I will admit, but once it downloads again, it won't have to do it each and every time. And now that we've got everything set up, I can go ahead and select this down here on where I want to output this to. And that would just launch the Explorer window, and I can name my footage and save it in this folder. So I'll just call this Jeep 4K and go ahead and click Save Video. And then we can go ahead and start processing. And that's gonna be in processing and rendering out our video, and it'll tell us how many frames have been processed. And we can see the original footage here and our new 4K footage over here on the right. And I can actually zoom in and out of each of these, kind of give me a live preview, which I do like. So if you see something that maybe like where it's not rendering correctly, you can go ahead and cancel that out before you have to wait through the entire thing. But I'm gonna go ahead and speed this up and we can compare the original footage with our new AI upscaled 4K footage. Here is the original HD video clip of the Jeep in slow motion. And now here's the upscaled 4K clip from Video Enhance AI. It definitely looks like a matching 4K clip in my opinion. And if we look in at some of the details of this clip, you can see quite a bit more detail on the trees in the background. You can see like the bark on the tree. And then if we look down at the rocks, you can see they have quite a bit more detail on the upscaled 4K version than they did on the original HD clip. And I definitely think that this clip would edit in nicely to any other 4K clips that I might have. So I was pretty impressed with the upscaling it did on this clip. Now the next clip that I wanted to upscale was actually an HD clip that I shot with a Canon 7D all the way back in 2010. You can see this is my family dog. He thinks he hears a bug flying around, so he's kind of looking around suspiciously. But looking at the original shot, it's a little bit soft, looks a little bit out of focus. And you can see the typical Canon 7D noise kind of appearing there on the black parts of his fur. So I went ahead and exported this out in 4K. And now we can see a direct comparison of the original shot with the 4K enhanced version that was exported. You can see quite a bit more detail in the fur, and the shot looks a lot sharper overall. And you can also see that the noise was removed from the black areas of the fur. So I was definitely impressed with the results from this shot. And then finally, I have a shot that I actually filmed in 4K of a city skyline. And the buildings in the distance look a little bit soft when you zoom in on them at 100%. So what I actually did with this shot was actually export it out in 8K. And now we can see the results of that. So quite a big difference here on the fine details when we pixel peep in on this. You can see how much softer the original shot looks at 100% versus the 8K version that we exported. It removed all of that softness, and we can see a lot more detail kind of on the building names. And we can also see a lot more detail that it brought out with like the satellite dishes and the antennas that are at the very top. So overall, I definitely say I was pretty impressed with the upscaling results that we got from these 3 clips. Now let's do a denoising comparison between Video Enhance AI and the denoising plugin from Neat Video. If you guys aren't familiar with Neat Video, it's widely considered to be one of the best denoising plugins available. So what I've got here are 2 different 4K drone clips. One was at dusk and one is actually at night. And both of these are very noisy clips. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the same Proteus AI model over here. I'm actually gonna reset all of the model parameters, and I'm just gonna worry about the reduce noise option here. And the shot at dusk, I'm gonna set it to be about 50%. And then for the output size down here, I don't actually wanna upscale this because again, it's already at 4K. So I'm just gonna leave it at 100%. You can see it already kind of says, this is just for denoising or deblocking your footage. Now let's go ahead and look at the results. Again, here's the original shot. I'm zooming in at 100% here so we can really see the noise. And here's the denoise version from Video Enhance AI. And here's the denoise version from Neat Video. Now it may be very difficult to see with the compression of this tutorial. Video Enhance AI definitely did a solid job, but I absolutely would have to give the edge to Neat Video. Neat Video pretty much removed all of the noise on the footage. And with Video Enhance AI, there was a subtle amount of noise still remaining on the clip. Again, far less than the actual original shot. Now on the shot that was filmed completely at night, this shot had a ton of noise on it. It was basically overwhelmed with noise. So on this footage, I actually increased the reduced noise in Video Enhance AI all the way up to 100%. So now let's go ahead and look at the original footage scaled up at 100%. And here's the reduced noise version from Video Enhance AI. Again, I think this one did a pretty solid job. It didn't handle this shot quite as well because there was just so much noise. But now we can see the results from Neat Video, which was absolutely mind-blowing on how well it still removed all the noise from this clip. So overall, I think the results we got from Video Enhance AI were definitely solid and definitely on par with most denoising plugins. But again, if you have a shot that really has extreme noise on it, Neat Video is definitely a superior option. Now let's check out another battle between Video Enhance AI and Twixtor to create some ultra smooth slow motion effects. Twixtor is a plugin from Revision Effects, and it's one of the most popular plugins for creating super slow motion effects. Now for testing out the ultra slow motion, I figured we might as well go back to the slow motion Jeep clip. And again, this was filmed at 180 frames per second. So let's go ahead and slow this down even more. And so what we need to do in this case for slow motion clips, we can't use the Proteus AI model. We're gonna use an AI model in here called Chronos. And you're gonna see we have Chronos Slow Motion version 2. So I'm gonna select that one. And you can see the little pop-up it gives us over here basically tells us this is the one used for creating slow motion effects. And when we select it, we get model parameters down here. You'll see it says slow motion. And for this particular clip, I'm actually gonna set it to be 400%. So we're gonna slow it down 4 times what it was originally. And that's really all we need to set up. Again, we have our video format down here and we have our output frames per second. I'm just gonna leave that on the default what the original clip was. And then we can just go ahead and click start processing. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the results. Here's the speed of the original shot. And now here's the clip from Video Enhance AI slowed down 400% more. So this will be the equivalent of the shot being filmed at 720 frames per second. And now here's a comparison with the same shot exported out at 400% slow motion from Twixtor. At first glance, I think both clips look very nice. Upon closer examination of the Twixtor shot, we can see a little bit of kind of that pixel motion tearing occurring above the hood of the Jeep that wasn't apparent on the Video Enhance AI export. Now this definitely was a challenging shot with all the movement going on, and that pixel smearing is something that is fairly common on shots that are slowed down with Twixtor. The next shot that I tested was a 4K drone shot, kind of flying through some snowy trees, and actually slowed this down 1000%. Here's the original shot. And here's the slowdown version with Video Enhance AI. And here's the slowdown version with Twixtor. Now both of these were nearly identical in this case, and they both handled this shot like a champ, especially with all the branches and the parallax going on here. Both of these shots looked really nice. Now after these tests, I would have to give the edge to Video Enhance AI. I think it handled the water just a little bit better visually than Twixtor. I do want to mention that Twixtor did render faster than Video Enhance AI, especially on 4K footage, but the Twixtor plugin also retails now for $329, which is pretty steep considering Video Enhance AI is $199 and ultimately gave us better results. Now let's take a look at increasing the frame rate on some footage. We're gonna take some footage that's 30 frames per second and increase it to 60 frames per second. Now for this shot, what I'm using is a clip of a roller coaster that I got from Shutterstock. It was filmed at 30 frames per second. Obviously it has a lot of fast motion on it. And I thought this would be a great clip that we could increase the frame rate of to be 60 frames per second. Now inside of Video Enhance AI, instead of using Chronos Slow-Mo like we did for the slow motion footage, we're gonna use Chronos Fast version 3. And this is the one that's recommended for speeding up the frame rate of your footage. Now for model parameters down here, you're gonna see we have an option for slow motion. We wanna leave that at 100%. But down here at the output FPS, we can go ahead and change this now to be 60 frames per second. And that's essentially gonna interpret those new frames that it's gonna create. And now we can go ahead and click start processing. Now you guys won't be able to see the results of the 60 frame per second version that I exported on this video because the actual frame rate of this tutorial is at 24 frames per second. However, I will say the 60 frames per second version looks stunning and didn't have any artifacts that you typically associate with footage that you increase the frame rate of. Just for comparison, here's a slowed down version of that 60 frames per second export. And here's a 60 frames per second export that I did from After Effects using pixel motion to increase the frame rate up to 60 frames per second as well. And you can see there's a ton of kind of pixel motion artifacting occurring on the tracks and on the front of the roller coaster cart. However, if you guys want to see the actual 60 frames per second clip that was exported, I will have a link to where you can preview that on the blog post for this tutorial. And a link for that will be in the description of this video, so you can go check that out. Next is deinterlacing, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this one because long story short, it works. Here's a shot before, and here's a shot after. As you can see, it removed all of the interlacing artifacts. Now the moment we've all been waiting for, can we use AI to restore SD footage? Can we make it look HD? This is the part where it gets very embarrassing for me and my friends. Sorry guys, I'm taking you with me. All right, what I've got inside of here is 2 clips from my college short films, and if we actually look at the specs on this clip, it is 640 by 480 pixels. Both of these clips were shot with a mini DV camera, the ones that use the kind of miniature cassette tapes. So this footage is extremely low resolution and has lots of aliasing. So I think it's a great candidate to try to restore some AI in here. And what we're gonna use over here for the AI models, we're gonna use the Proteus AI model. Again, that's the one we're probably gonna use 90% of the time. And for the model parameters, I'm just gonna go ahead and auto detect that. So to go ahead and set those automatically. And if we come down here for the output size, I'm gonna set this to be 4K. And now we can go ahead and start processing this clip. And now let's take a look at the results. So I've paused it here on the first frame of the original footage and scaled it up so we can kind of see how pixelated this looks. And now let's see what this looks like after it has been enhanced with AI and exported at 4K. So immediately we can see quite a big difference here, and the results on this one were pretty stunning. Now, if we go back to the original clip and kind of scroll through this a little bit, when my buddy Robert here opens the door, I want to pause it here again, and let's now look at the 4K export that's been enhanced. And one of the things that really stood out to me immediately was if you look at the letter that's kind of mounted on the wall in the background, it's amazing how many more details you can actually see on it now from the AI export. And the lines, kind of the frame, was very alias before, and now you can just see it looks a lot clearer. And as we scroll through, as this keeps playing, let's go ahead and look back again at the original shot. And you can just see it looks very noisy, and there's lots of aliasing here you can see on the back of his shirt. And now if we go ahead and look at the 4K enhanced version, you can see it totally removes that aliasing from his shirt, and we can see a lot more detail like in his hair. So this was definitely a pretty impressive result. Now, in some ways, I do think it kind of removes some of the originality of the clip. And sometimes I think it actually kind of looks as if you kind of have an Instagram kind of beauty filter on everything. So that wasn't as appealing to me. And I do think if you were gonna like export this out and like kind of remaster a video like this, because the original video had so much noise, you probably want to add some noise back over the actual footage, like some film grain. But now let's go ahead and take a look at a shot that did not fare as well as that first one. Now this footage is from a short film where my buddy's kind of running around the college campus. And on this very first shot, we can see he's running into this stairwell. And if we actually look at the enhanced version in 4K, you can see there's not enough details really on his face on the original footage because it's just so blurry and so low resolution. It really kind of muddies up the features on the face and looks pretty odd. And you can see it's struggling with aliasing on the bricks on the wall. You can see at the very beginning of the clip, it did a good job of removing that aliasing, but as he runs past them here, the aliasing actually comes back. But now if we fast forward to a clip where he's running through the parking lot, you can see this footage from the mini DV camera obviously is low resolution, it's definitely blurry. But let's look at the AI enhanced version, and this footage now looks like a complete mess. I guess you could say it's sharper, but it almost looks like it has an 8-bit filter applied to it. Everything looks way too kind of enhanced, but like in an artificial way. The cars almost look like they have like a cartoon filter applied to them, and the trees, you can tell it's adding in way too much kind of synthetic detail in the background. So in this situation, I would definitely prefer the original shot, even with all of its flaws. Video Enhanced AI is definitely struggling with some of the smaller details and intricacies of this particular clip. Now this last shot from college we're gonna take a look at is actually from a short film where I'm wearing a fake mustache. That's not embarrassing. That's not. Now let's see what happens when we enhance this shot with AI. I can't ever unsee that. It actually gets even more scary when you see my mouth move. The AI seems to get confused and looks like my mouth opens from my lower lip. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's cleanse our mental palate now by looking at some old home video footage of some of my dogs. You can see that this shot was pretty compressed. It was also shot with a mini DV camera. And now when we enhance it with AI, it definitely does a much better job. It removes nearly all of the aliasing and compression artifacts. It does add a little too much synthetic detail for my taste in the trees that are in the background, but overall it's a pretty nice result. Finally, I did one last test just for fun because I was curious to see how Video Enhanced AI would perform. I took some footage of me on camera from a previous tutorial, and this was 4K footage, and I scaled it down to 853 by 480 pixels, which essentially is mini DV quality. I rendered that out, and now we can see it's quite pixelated. So then I used Video Enhanced AI to scale that footage back up to 4K, and the results were pretty amazing. you can see just how much detail was actually brought back. I was really impressed with things like the hair detail that it brought back. And honestly, I could probably edit this clip into some actual 4K footage that's been shot, and nobody would probably even notice the difference. And as an Easter egg, I actually did do that on one of the shots where I'm on camera in this tutorial. I scaled it down to mini DV quality and then scaled it back up to 4K using Video Enhance AI. So if you want to go back and look, see if you can find which clip I did that on, and then leave the time code in the comments. Now, hopefully you guys enjoyed this look at Topaz Labs Video Enhance AI. I wanted to do a pretty deep dive on this. It's definitely an impressive app and it has its strengths and weaknesses. It definitely isn't gonna magically transform your VHS home videos into masterpieces, but if you do need to upscale footage from 720p or HD all the way up to 4K, it's pretty amazing. And I'll definitely be using it in the future for slow motion shots and footage that I wanna convert to 60 frames per second. Now, if you guys enjoyed my embarrassing home videos, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. I'm Charles with PremiumBeat, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.